Welcome to the 5-Star Retirement Show with Patrick Mueller, best-selling co-author of Dare to Succeed and president of Bella Advisors. Today, he'll be sharing his 5-star retirement formula, including lifetime income planning, investment planning, tax planning, healthcare planning, and legacy planning. Here's Chris Monroe and Patrick Mueller.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to 5-Star Retirement, brought to you by Bella Advisors here in Roswell, Georgia. I'm Chris Monroe, your host, alongside the financial guru, the man who lives, breathes, eats, and sleeps everything money management, retirement management. Mr. Patrick Mueller here, the one, the only. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Always glad to be with you and enjoy the time we spend together. I know every week getting more and more listeners and viewers in and you know that are tackling this topic that admittedly cannot be sexy at times of retirement planning. And you know, what are we going to do?
That doesn't sound sexy at all. We got to come up with a better.
We've got to come up with something that
we were talking about that before. That it's the retirement's a little dated retirement planning, and yeah, it's not sexy at all.
Well, you know, and things that have been around. I mean, you know, it's like being typecast. You know, if you're a character and you play a role for so long, you're typecast. And I think retirement has that stigma. It still has that. We still think of grandpa. Mm-hmm. You know, and today when we talked about it before, you've got a client that you know wants to go whitewater rafting. You know, I mean, this is not something that my grandfather would have talked about. Excuse me, you know, in the last generations about what retirement used to be, but whereas it was really not as important. Well, I shouldn't say that. It was mildly important to plan because you live such a short time after retirement, but it's so important today because people are living so much longer.
For sure. And it's about getting clear on what you want. And that's what it really is. It's about, you know, finding out what excites you again and what do you want to be spending your days doing. We have this exercise that we walk the folks we work with through, which is, you know, what is a perfect day to you? Or give me a few different perfect days. You know, what is a perfect day to you and what are you spending your time doing? And who are you doing it with? And start going through that exercise because it's really about getting as many of those perfect days in every single year as we can possibly get in. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day is doing all the stuff that you want to be doing. I mean, for me, one of my passions is playing the drums, and I've been playing the drums since my earliest memories. If I could figure out how to make a living doing it, that's what I'd be doing. But for right now, it's doing.
You play the guitar on your MTV.
That's right.
That ain't working.
but that's what juices me up, and I do studio work and different things like that.
Sure.
And it's how I enjoy spending my time. Or, you know, it could be being at the beach and having a nice, delicious adult beverage or something like that. But figuring out what that is for you, and then how do we get as many of those days each year as we can possibly get?
But there's no wrong answer in that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
right.
That's the beautiful thing about when someone calls 770-545-8881 or goes to bellaadvisors.com and they sit down across a desk from you and in a nice, comfortable setting, and they talk about what they want to do. There's no wrong answer, but you start to pull those things, you get into people's minds, and it's more than just about money. And that's what I love, Patrick.
And it's not, because the money is just a tool. It's just a tool to get what you want. And a lot of times people haven't thought about this stuff. And like, Patrick, we haven't thought about this stuff in years. And we've never talked about it together. Everybody just kind of has their own little, kind of stays in their own little bubble, in their own little world, and gets caught up in the day-to-day things that happen to us and haven't really thought about the things that are really important. We get away from that because we live this delayed gratification lifestyle where, you know, you're supposed to wait until you're retired to do anything in your life. And then that can change on people too. So you want to be thinking about that. You're younger than, you're not getting close to retiring, or you're younger. I mean, don't be putting off those things that you want to be doing, because I have at least a few times a year where I've got a client that passes away, and they pass away prematurely. You know, so there was one recently that just retired, and she was 65, and she went through a battle with cancer, and she went into remission. But then after she was told she went into remission, she passed away like 3-4 months later after that. And her husband was telling me, Patrick, do not get caught up into the rat race. He's like, don't get caught up into it. Don't put off the trips and thinking that you're going to do it later on and all this stuff. Now, you want to plan for the future, but but don't put off the things that are important. And I'm a big proponent of that. When people are retiring, spend and enjoy your money now while you're here. Spend it with your kids. Spend it with your grandkids. Create those experiences, because that's what they're going to remember down the road versus you just leaving a big pile of money, or you were just able to amass a big pile of money. You're not going to be writing that on your gravestone.
And there's nothing wrong. You talk about inheritance planning, and legacy planning as one of the 5 stars, which I love. And that is oftentimes very important to people. But again, it's just one of 5 stars. And see, and that might be the only thing that people have thought about. Well, I want just enough to live on, but I want to leave all this money to, and maybe that is somebody that they really want to pass along their money to, insert charity here, insert whatever here. And that's fine. But I bet you for a lot of people, when you start getting into that exercise, you find out that it's much broader than that.
It definitely is. Yeah. Usually it's much broader than that. And people are just used to being so frugal.
Right.
And so how you think about money has been very ingrained in you since you were a kid. So when I'm working with folks and they're retiring, well, most of my clients didn't grow up in the Great Depression. Maybe some of them did, maybe the tail end of it, but their parents did. So the way that they think about money, it's the reason why they've gotten to this point, because they've been able to save enough money to be able to retire and to get to this point. But a lot of times when people are getting to retirement and they're telling you that they want to spend and enjoy their money, but then they've been saving their money their whole lifetime and being very frugal with their money, it can almost be painful for people to actually start spending and enjoying their money, and they're really kind of scared to do it.
And I think it's a personality thing too. I think for some people are spenders, me, and some people are painful savers. They hang on to every nickel. And I think it's personality and environment that you've grown up in. So let's transition into managing that money and managing your life. And I love this. We talked about this in the tease leading up into the show, is that really we're the CEO of our lives, and if we think about our lives and not just the retirement angle, but being the CEO of our overall life, we have to make those decisions every day. And, one of those things that is on the list here is setting performance goals. And we sometimes don't do that, of what we expect of ourselves, what we expect of our investments, what we expect of how retirement is what that means, what that after post-career looks like for us. So that's important, to set those performance goals.
It's definitely important, because a lot of times people, especially when people are taking too much risk, when we're talking about performance and we're talking about your investments, a lot of times people are invested way too aggressively for what it is that they actually need. So when we do an analysis, we do this Morningstar and Quanti analysis. It's just a reporting agency on data. But we take all the stuff that you own and we put it into that, and we go through the last big downturn we went through, like in 2008. And I had this gentleman that came in that told me he was invested very conservatively. But guess what? If we went through a 2008 market condition, he was going to lose 54% of his life savings. So at this stage in your life, right, you're getting close to retiring, or you are retired. Can you afford to take a 50% hit?
And that's part of a performance goal. I mean, a CEO has to look at, not only what is going to be the upside, but what could be the downside, and to manage that. So
that's right.
And you have to think about it as a CEO, and not everybody is comfortable in that role. And that's where you kind of step in and help to guide them in that at Bella Advisors.
That's exactly right. So we can take a look at, well, what kind of return do you really need? When you're retiring, what do you need to make it successful? And a lot of the times, it's not so much the return, right? It's taking away all the risk. It's taking away the downside. It's taking away all that, because here's the thing: is that if we had $100,000, and let's say for an example, you can relate this to the stock market, but you can call the stock market a casino, just for this example. But say for an example, we got $100,000, we're sitting at the blackjack table, and we lose 50%, all right? Just like the market would go down 50%. And what the problem is that people think that they still have that full $100,000 sitting there, but they don't. When it goes down 50%, you only got $50,000, because now the casino has the other 50%. And so now you're only earning on that $50,000 that you got now. Okay, so if it comes back 50% like you just lost,
so you've lost all of that earning power.
You've lost all the earning
on the
power.
Principal amount.
That's right.
That's
so if
gone,
you come back 50%, okay, 50% of $50,000 is $25,000. So you're just back up to $75,000.
Wow.
You actually need 100% return. You lost 50%, but you actually need 100% return at this point just to get back to even. just to get back to where you were.
That's that higher math, Patrick.
I know,
It's scary.
It's scary.
But it's what CEOs have to think about in a company, and that's where Patrick can help. Question everything. You know, CEOs like to ask questions because they need information, and we talk a lot, and we've talked about other shows about, you know, and CEOs and good, not even CEOs, but just leaders in general. What I feel is a good leader know what they don't know and are not afraid to ask for help for things that they don't know. You surround yourself with great people, and then you get to take the credit for them making you look good. You know, and that's okay. I bet you're okay with that.
100%. 100%.
You know, you can help them look good and live the 5-star life, and you know, and you're like, hey, it's okay. I don't need the credit. So, be willing to adapt. You know, we talked about that. We'll have to hit the break here in just a minute, but that's another thing that CEOs have to do. And companies that go out of business, Blockbuster, Circuit City, Radio Shack, didn't adapt.
Yeah. Well, now you got what is it? Apple. Right. That's, you know, looks like they're going to be coming out with their new platform to, you know, get into a fight with Amazon and Netflix and all that. So
you have to be willing to adapt. And just like, you know, just like a company, either you do or you can perish. You know, and maybe not in the physical sense, but your finances can.
Nokia. I just ran it. I was just.
Nokia. Remember we all had a candy bar
Nokia
phone.
Yeah, it was about the snake game. Did you ever play that on the Nokia phone?
I did.
Yeah, it was something about the snake game.
But where are they now? And look at what happened to BlackBerry. And I loved BlackBerry. But
me too.
You know, it's about adapting and understanding market trends, and the same thing is true with your life and your finances. So get in touch with Patrick today. Don't put this off any longer. I know you got a lot going on, but that's not an excuse. 770-545-8881. Don't you want to be in a great place when you can finally not have to answer to a boss anymore? BellaAdvisors.com. And another great segment on 5-Star Retirement is coming up right after this. Welcome back to 5-Star Retirement. We are the place helping you achieve and reach financial freedom so that you can go out there and do what you want after you can say goodbye to the boss and the alarm clock and traffic in Atlanta. If you live in the metro Atlanta area, you know that that's probably one of the reasons, maybe not even the boss anymore, but getting from one place to another in this city is just grueling these days.
Yeah, it's so funny when you're driving down the road and you see somebody that's stuck in traffic and they're just reading a book. That's the one that cracks me up, is they're just creeping along and they're reading a book.
They said no cell phones, but they didn't say nothing about books. Right. So, I mean, it's the idea of this freedom. And I think if we talk about freedom instead of the word retirement, because I think retirement, when we say, you know, to retire or expire in the English language, it has that connotation of we're done.
Yeah.
But it's a freedom. It's we've made it to this point in our lives, and now we can do what the heck we want to do if we've planned correctly and you know, if we've done what we need to do. And that's where you come in, and that's why I love Bella Advisors and your approach so much. And you talk about the 5 stars and the 5-star retirement. And one of those you talk about is healthcare. And I bet you there's a lot of people that just assume, well, Medicare is just going to pick up everything. And,
that's right.
And, you know, I don't have to really think about that, you know, in retirement.
That's right. And they don't realize the things that Medicare doesn't cover. So Medicare is going to cover a good bit of stuff, and it could be great if you get a good supplement plan. You can have pretty little out of pocket when it comes to your regular medical bills. It's when it starts coming to chronic care, home health care, assisted living, nursing home care. That's the stuff that Medicare doesn't cover, or it's extremely limited on. Maybe it covers you for 30 or 60 days. But other than that, that stuff is so expensive. I want to say the average nursing home cost in Atlanta is over $8,000 a month for a nursing home.
And that's full-time skilled nursing care, full-time care, that kind of thing, not assisted living, or there's,
That's right. So assisted living is about half of that. Assisted living is about half of that.
But that's still not cheap.
Or if you're paying to have somebody come into your own home. I ran into this lady. She came out to one of our events that we did, and she pulled me aside afterwards, and her husband fell down in the bathtub, and he hit his head. And when he hit his head, it ended up paralyzing him from the waist down. So she can't pick her husband up and in and out of the shower and all that stuff. So they had to pay for somebody to come into their home to be able to take care of him. And in their own home, she was paying about $5,000 a month for that. And she was telling me they were going to have to, do a reverse mortgage to suck all of the equity out of the house to help pay for the care. So it's heartbreaking to hear some of those things. But the statistic I read lately is that 72% of folks at some point in their lifetime are going to need to have some kind of healthcare assistance in the future. So if you knew that there was 10 houses on your block and 7 of the 10 were going to burn down, would you not be doing something to protect yourself from fire if that's going to happen?
Yeah, that's a big statistic. So we're talking about 3/4 of the people in the population that at some point will need some sort of assisted living. I mean,
it's just not fun stuff to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about it.
It's not fun to talk about. And yeah, I mean, let's face it. And I'll be the one to say it. You know, our healthcare system has not our healthcare quality. We have the best in the world as far as healthcare quality, but our healthcare system has become a mess.
It really is.
It is just a nightmare.
It is.
And it's become a political football, and we can talk more about this, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. It's become a political football. It's gotten to the point now where, you know I have a friend of mine that owns an ambulance company, and he's been very successful, but he has to bill like 4, 5, 10 times what he expects to collect by the time it goes through all of the nonsense and then the non-payers and what they will pay. And then you've got Medicaid involved in there. And then some states have their own special peach care things, and all of that stuff. So, and then just to go through the Medicare book, Patrick, I mean, I saw when my dad reached retirement age or got close to it, they sent him this phone book in small print. That's way to go, government, small print, old people. And then you're supposed to pick these plans and how do you know what to do? I mean, and then, based upon that, what is it going to cost? People don't know. So
that's exactly, and that's why you got to be talking with somebody that understands the stuff that can help you figure it out and put all the different pieces together. Because most people know what's important to them already. I'm not here trying to tell you what should be important to you. We just help you put all the different pieces together and how to fit that together the way that you want it. But yeah, things can change. And actually, just as we're talking about this, I had my ex-wife's.
Let me just. There we go.
Oh yeah. But her niece's husband, he's in his early 30s, just had a massive stroke, right? Put him in
early 30s.
Early 30s.
Wow.
Put him into the hospital. He was in kind of a coma for about a week or so, and he's awake now, but still can't talk. And so things can change in an instant. And, so now there's, GoFundMe pages and things like that are out there trying to raise money to take care of these healthcare expenses. And, especially when you're retiring or later on in life where it's probably more likely to happen. I mean, things can change in an instant. We got to at least have a plan for that. We at least need to be thinking through, okay, well, if this does happen, what is going to be the plan that we're going to have for it? And think through all the different ways like we talk about on other shows, what are the different recipes that we can use to be able to handle that when that does arise?
You brought up a good point about GoFundMe. There's one of the things that's changed a lot in our society over the past decades and generations has been personal responsibility. I think a lot of people, I heard somebody say it the other day that GoFundMe is now people's life insurance. That's their plan. So when something happens, I'll just put up a GoFundMe page, or the government is going to take care of me, and neither of which is a plan. So, and that's a scary thing to think about too. We talked a little bit a couple of moments ago about long-term health care and, Medicare and that kind of, ongoing health management and maintenance is one thing in retirement. But are there ways to protect yourself against those expenses for long-term care? I know there were some products, and I'm sure there's probably some more now that are out there for long-term care.
There are. So there are different recipes that you can use. And so one thing is you can get the assets out of your name, okay? And so people can get the assets out of their name, whether it be their kids or in certain types of trusts where you can protect your estate from being spent down if one spouse has to go into a nursing home. So, and they do what's called a 5-year look back. So they'll look back 5 years to see if you moved anything around. But as long as you did some pre-planning ahead of time, a lot of times you can get Medicaid to pick up a lot of these expenses if you don't have any other plan. But if you do have assets, then there are different things that are available to you than long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance isn't bad, but I think the industry has done a really poor job and you see these premiums going through the roof. It still doesn't cover everything, and you have to qualify for it to be able to use it. So you can't. The way you qualify for it is you cannot perform 2 of your 6 daily living activities. So like eating, bathing, toileting, things of that nature. Well, there's so many different things that could happen that could put you into an assisted living facility or into a nursing home where you still have all your cognitive functions. And those things are not going to be picking up the bill. So luckily, there are a lot of other things that are out there that can help us if we have chronic care or home health care or we need it for certain things. There are different places that you can put your money. So there are different life insurance accounts that can help you with that, to where if you put your money into it, you still have access to it. But if we put $100,000 in, maybe they'll give you access to $500,000 to be able to pull off of if you need it for home health care, assisted living, or nursing home care.
What about if somebody is still working? Let's say they choose to work into their 70s, and Medicaid picks up at what, 65? 65? I forgot.
65. Yep.
Okay, so 65 at Medicare. Can they have Medicare and a private insurance plan through their employer at the same time?
They can. The private insurance is just going to pick up. So Medicare picks up 80% of the medical bills. So you get what's called a supplement or whatever your employer's plan might be that picks up the remaining 20%. So you get you got Medicare Part A and Part B, and that covers 80% of the medical bills. And then you get a Part C plan, which is going to cover that 20%.
This is where the brain starts melting with Part A, C, B.
Yeah, and then you got a D plan, which is your prescription drug program.
Good grief.
Yeah, so we're just going to go through the alphabet.
And surprise, surprise, they take the Medicare premium right out of your Social Security
So
benefits. Convenient. We're conveniently billed to your Social Security. So there's so much to think about in healthcare, and we could probably spend shows on the healthcare things that change depending on who's in administration and all of this. But it is something that you have to have help on. I mean, it's in planning for that, because I know my grandmother, and this was back in the 80s, went into a nursing home with Alzheimer's and had a pretty sizable nest egg. But you want to talk about breaking open a nest egg, scrambling it, and taking care of it in a hurry. That's exactly what happened to hers, because even at that time, a full-time assistant. And by the way, she lived for 8 years with Alzheimer's as a complete vegetable.
Well, and they say that if you have Alzheimer's, that your stress levels go way down, so you tend to live longer. It's cruel to the family that's surviving and to the victim.
It's unbelievable. So, this is why, one of the many reasons why you need to get in and see Patrick, as soon as possible. And you've got some time off maybe coming up around the holidays here. Get in and see him. 770-545-8881. 770-545-8881. Check him out online at BellaAdvisors.com. Coming up, we'll have another great segment. And then, of course, you got to stick with us for the question and answer segment coming up in our final segment today. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to 5-Star Retirement. Chris Monroe and Patrick Mueller here for segment number 3. And I think we all would say, Patrick, that we choose the easy way whenever we can. No reason to make this any harder than it has to be. But a lot of people, we start talking about retirement, and that word and the stigma that's associated with it, and eyes glaze over and minds kind of just turn to mush, and we don't want to think about it. It's something we want to put off. But let's talk about 10 ways. We tease this into this segment, 10 ways that we can help people make it a little bit easier. And I'll let you weigh in on all of these. But number 1 is to shift your viewpoint. In retirement, you go from wealth accumulation to providing a lifetime income stream. And that's one of the easiest ways that, one of the ways that we can make this simplify is just to be shifting that viewpoint and understanding that.
Definitely, because like we talked about before on previous shows, that there's another word for retirement. It's called unemployment. You're losing your paycheck. So it's all about, how do you replace that paycheck? How do you get that cash flow coming in every month, every year for as long as you're going to live? And how do you make that easy? Because it's not about sweating ticker symbols and interest rates and hoping the market's just going to keep going up year after year after year. It's not about that. It's about making sure that you got that cash flow coming in. Because I sit down with some folks that have very little assets, but they got great cash flow, never going to have a thing to worry about. I sit down with some folks that have millions, and they're on a crash course for disaster because of their lifestyle. And it's amazing how quickly you can spend that money down. It's easy to spend it.
Cash poor, I guess. I mean, there are a lot of assets and no income stream. So
that's right. That's right. You hear it all the time with these professional athletes or people who win the lottery who aren't used to having that kind of money, and just how quickly you can just blow through it.
Yeah, it's you can go through $1 million in a hurry today, and it doesn't take much.
It's not what it used to be.
Nope, that's for sure. Number 2 is reviewing anticipated income needs. I bet a lot of people will say, well, my income needs, Patrick, are going to go down when I'm retired. Not always true, is it?
Most of the time it usually goes up because every day's a Saturday now, and more idle time tends to equal more money coming out of your pocket because now you're figuring out different stuff to do. What are you going to do with all your time every single day? You're going to be playing more golf. You're going to be getting into more things. You're going to be traveling more, and we got to get really clear on what that's going to be. So I have people walk through an exercise because almost nobody typically knows how much they're really spending each year a lot of times. And the easiest thing to do is your bank has a little ledger at the beginning of every single month, and it shows you here's the beginning balance, here's the total deposits that came in during the month, here's the total withdrawals that came out, and then there you got your ending balance. All you want to do is look at the one number on the statement. Do not try to reverse engineer your checkbook, but just look at that total withdrawal number and then total that up on the last 12-month statements, and that will show you how much money really went out the door.
That's important.
And that's what your lifestyle is. Not only what the lifestyle looks like now, but what do you want it to look like when you retire? I mean, do you want to be sitting on your front porch and not going anywhere or doing anything? So we got to plan for these things. And where people get more too conservative is the lifestyle money. And that's not where you want to be conservative. That's where people get into problems.
Right. We're talking about 5-star retirement, not 1-star retirement.
That's right.
So that's where
nobody wants a 1-star retirement.
Right. That's the Motel 6 or whatever in there. Number 3, know your Social Security benefits, and I think a lot of people really don't know what they're going to be getting in Social Security and when to take it. So that's another tip to getting that down to making this simple.
So important to be working with somebody that can help you analyze that stuff, because if you're a couple between the ages of 62 and 70, there's over 591 different ways that you can file for your Social Security benefits.
What? 591?
591 ways that you can file for your Social Security. It's crazy. I mean, leave it to the government to make things so complicated, and then they're not allowed to give you advice on what the best option is for you or the best strategy for taking your Social Security benefits.
Makes me think of that old Paul Simon song, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. 591 ways to file for your Social Security.
Yeah, you need.
Okay, maybe that didn't work. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, that was just.
We're going to leave the.
We'll just leave that right there.
Simon.
There we go. Number 4, factoring in inflation's impact. Here's a biggie that people don't think about.
They call it the silent killer. I'm not sure who came up with that, but yes, the silent killer in retirement. And I ask this question a lot: that how many folks paid more for their last car than they did for their first home? And you see the impact of inflation over time, and it just eats away at your money. So if you're not getting your money or your income growing for you over time, then that can be a huge thing that you're not really thinking about. That we got to factor in inflation, because if inflation is say 3% a year, then what that means is that 20 years from now, everything's going to be double the price. And so how are you going to get your income, and how are you going to get your money keeping up with that?
And that wasn't, again, when we talked about life expectancy and the old school retirement, that wasn't a big deal because you lived 5, maybe 10 years if you were lucky out of retirement. Today it could be 30 or more.
Yeah, people are living more than a third of their lifetime in their retirement.
That's amazing. Number 5, and we talked about this in the last segment, so we don't have to really expand, is preparing for those healthcare costs. And that's another piece of this that can, can make the path to retirement much easier. Number 6, and we have talked about this too, but it's so important, and this always gets my blood going, is that tax management strategy.
So huge.
You want to talk about pitfalls and landmines and those wires that out in the jungle. A lot of traps there.
For sure, and a lot of times when you're talking to your CPA, and I fall into the same thing when I talk to my CPA. I talk to him about tax planning and tax strategies and things like that. And he's like, well, Patrick, I mean, that's really what you want to be going to a financial advisor for. I'm like, I know that's what I do. And I do planning, right? But you're the tax guy. And he's like, well, we do tax preparing. And, because pretty much what they're doing, you're handing somebody that is, for an example, 2018, here's all the stuff that happened in 2018. And they can't change the stuff that happened. All they can do is reduce your tax liabilities the best that they can with what you just handed to them, versus doing tax planning, taking a look at where you're at now, and there are ways that we can legally reduce or eliminate certain taxes now or at some point in the future, And a lot of times people think their taxes are going to go down when they retire, and that is typically not the case. Things get way more complicated when you retire.
One of the many reasons that you need to get in, 770-545-8881 on the screen there, 770-545-8881, BellaAdvisors.com. So we're up to number 7
Lucky
out of
number
the 10.
7.
Lucky number 7 of things that are making it easier toward a path toward that 5-star post-working. We're trying to use not retirement. Understanding market volatility. We talked a little bit about this and how many people think that, when they're 63, they should still, have 80% of their money in aggressive growth stocks, and I want to continue to maximize the market. But what happens if another 2008 happens?
That's right. We haven't, and here's the crazy thing is people are getting so complacent on the stock market right now. We're in the longest bull run in stock market history. That happened March of this year, where we hit the longest bull run. So the previous 2 longest bull runs were 1929, right?
Through the roaring 20s,
Yeah.
which came to a crashing end.
That's right.
And it went into the whimpering 30s.
Yes, we had the great start of the
Right.
Great Depression. And so it took the market 18 years for the markets to recover from that point. And then you had the tech bubble burst in 2000. So those were the last 2 longest bull runs. And then here we are right now. We're at all-time highs in stock market history. People are getting so complacent that you just put your money in the markets and they just go up. Everybody thinks they're a financial genius, but you could throw a dart at and pick stocks and they would have gone up over the last 10 years.
Isn't that amazing? And I watched a documentary recently on the 20s, and it was fascinating. The euphoria of the 20s in the stock market was so much that people thought there was never going to be an end in sight. But here's the scarier thing. We didn't learn from that. We didn't learn from the next one. We didn't learn from the next one. And we probably won't learn from this one, but you can help people avoid it.
That's right. You got to pay attention to the stuff that's going on right now. It's crazy.
Right.
Have we ever seen negative interest rates around the world? Crazy stuff happening.
Negative interest rates.
And then you just had the Federal Reserve. Nobody's talking about this. You just had the Federal Reserve a few weeks ago that added $1.4 trillion to the balance sheet. So the quantitative easing that they were doing a few years ago to artificially stimulate the economy, they're doing it now. They're just not calling it quantitative easing because they don't want to freak everybody out. But this is the stuff that's currently happening right now, and they're trying to stop us from going into recession. They're putting the Band-Aids on everything, trying to keep everything cooking forward. And guess what? They're just going to reach a time where they can't, all this stuff silly stuff that they're doing, it's just going to backfire because they haven't, I mean, we could talk the whole show about this stuff, is that 2008, they haven't fixed the problems. Nobody's gone to jail, and they haven't fixed any of the problems that happened in 2008 where they should have just let things fix itself then, and they didn't. And they bailed everything out, and it's just gotten dramatically worse since then.
I think a lot of people, and myself included, we live in such prosperous times that I think we have gotten to the point, Patrick, where we believe that another depression could never happen, that we could just never get to that point. And I disagree.
I agree with that
too. And it's scary to think about that. So where do you want to be? And again, this is not the happiest subject to talk about, but again, we are due for a major correction. Call it what you want, but for that to go down. We got a couple of minutes before the break, so let's get in 8, 9, and 10.
Let's do it.
Number 8 is getting those important documents organized, whether it's financial statements, so that your spouse knows where this is, that you're on the same page.
And what the plan is. Because most plan is in their heads, right?
If it's a guy, then it's in the head. Number 9 is reviewing that retirement plan on a regular basis, which, it's one thing. It's not just a one and done. This is an ongoing thing. And that leads us to number 10, which is to call Bella Advisors. This is the easy part.
That's easy.
This is the easy. It's
so
like
easy.
the big red easy button.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, right. We need an easy button in here. So you want to make this easier for you, and you want to make sure that you maximize your income, your investments, and your quality of life in what could be the best 30 years of your life. Call Patrick today. Get in, see Bella Advisors, 770-545-8881, 770-545-8881. Patrick's going to do a no-cost stress test and analysis on your portfolio and your overall retirement plan. And guess what? If you don't have a retirement plan, you're going to have one when you walk out of there. I can guarantee you that, or at least the beginnings of one.
That's right.
So, all right, question and answer segment is coming up next. Don't you dare go anywhere. We're right back after this. Welcome back to the show that helps you live your latter years the 5-star way. That's why we call it 5-star retirement. For Bella Advisors and Patrick Mueller alongside, I'm Chris Monroe, and it's question and answer segment time.
Love it.
Mr. Mueller.
Yes.
And we always love these. And some of them are simple, and then some of them get complex. And I'll do my best to read and explain these. So we heard from Scott in Decatur, who says, I'm 56 years old, currently unemployed, and may soon need to consider a hardship withdrawal from my 401k. I anticipate that I'll need a partial sum to pay off outstanding loans and credit card debts totaling approximately $50,000. Can I then make monthly withdrawals from the balance in order to cover my monthly expenses if needed? So basically, he wants to make a lump sum and then talk about making monthly withdrawals. Is that an option?
Okay, say that one more time. What type of account was it?
It's a 401k, and I don't think I think you either take a loan or you don't, right? Or is it a withdrawal?
Well, you can take a withdrawal from your 401k. The problem with that is that they will take out a minimum of 20% in taxes, and you don't have any say over that. So what you want to do, if you've left a job and you've got a dormant 401k that you've left behind, or you hit 59.5, well, what you want to do is roll that over into your own, even if you're still currently working, you can roll that over to your own individual IRA.
He's unemployed. So I think the reason he's 56.
So then it is dormant, right?
Yeah, it's dormant.
So then it's dormant. So he can roll it over into his own individual IRA account. And once it's in your own individual IRA, you can do something that's called a 72T when he's pulling money out, as long as it's equal each year over a 5-year period of time, to where you don't have to take a 10% penalty because it's earlier than 59.5.
And
or it could be a hardship.
Are the rules different with that on an IRA than a 401k?
Well, the 401k, it's just they're going to automatically take out 20% in taxes, where if he's unemployed and he doesn't have any income coming in, he could be getting that money out in a much more tax-efficient way, right, instead of having to automatically send 20% to the government.
This sounds like something that he might need to come in and talk to you about.
For sure, yeah. Anything when it comes to taxes and how to pull your money out, you got to be talking to somebody about that.
This is complicated.
And that's what we do. We help folks with their tax planning.
All right. Scott, great question, and best of luck to you, my friend. I know that's got to be tough, and especially being unemployed in your latter working years. Not as much of a stigma as it used to be, but it's still very tough at any time. We heard from Penelope in Loganville, who says, I'm 80 years old and have 15 grandchildren. Wow.
Oh, man.
I have about $300,000 that I will put in an irrevocable. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Irrevocable trust. That's one of those words you don't use very much. For my grandchildren, the beneficiaries range in age from 4 to 28. The distribution will be based on education, health, and welfare. The exact amount distributed will be up to the trustee. Given at least this is a complicated question. Given at least a 7-year time horizon, should I invest this money in mutual funds, indexes, ETFs, or something else?
I would say something else. So I didn't really say what type of money it was, if it was just after-tax money. But if you're wanting to leave money behind and you're going to put it into an irrevocable trust, where you're going to get the most bang for your buck is life insurance. If that money, because you could turn that $300,000 into $1 million, or maybe somewhere close to it, and then you would have that money going tax-free to your family. Versus if you're putting it in ETFs or you're putting it into the markets, then you're kind of gambling a little bit as to what that's going to do over that period of time. But if you're legacy driven, then there are places where you can put it where you can get guarantees of what's going to happen. And especially if you're wanting to pay it out over time inside of that trust, then maybe you want to have a little bit more control over what's going to happen with that money and how it's going to grow and protect it, versus, who knows, the markets could go down 50%, and you don't want that $300,000 going down to $150,000.
Right, and this goes back to the legacy star of the 5 stars, and legacy planning.
That's right.
And this is where another great example of where she could come in and make sure that she's setting this up in a way that's going to maximize the money that's going to her grandchildren.
Because what she's trying to do is she's really trying to control from the grave, is what she's trying to do,
right,
and restrict and how the money is going to be paid out, and and that's just about thinking about those things, because some kids are good with their money and some kids are not good with their money. So some people want to protect the kids from themselves, and that's why you set up those kinds of things. But if she's wanting to know where to put her money, we got to understand, what is she really trying to accomplish, and then the best tools will start coming out on what to use for that.
Wow, great question. And 15 grandchildren, 80 years old. That's
good job.
A great life, and great job. Unusual question here, and one that we haven't had from Evan in Smyrna, but I think it's a cool question. I've been bombarded with ads talking about robo-advisory platforms, and I've seen a lot of those too. That's kind of the new thing. This whole set it and forget it type thing.
Low cost,
and I don't have to. Excuse me, I don't have to deal with it. What do these tools lack that an in-person financial planner like yourself can provide?
Well, so that's going to be covering one of the 5 stars. We got 5 to retirement planning, so we're just talking about investments, right? But how is the robo-advisor helping you accomplish what it is that you're needing in your retirement? So how is that helping you do it? And a lot of times maybe that's good for people who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. But once you start getting close to retirement, you want to be working with somebody that can help you putting a plan together for all stars, because we've got your income plan. How do you replace your paycheck when you retire? That ties into the investment plan. How are the investments designed to help you accomplish that? And then we got tax planning, healthcare planning, and legacy planning. And guess what? A robo-advisor is not going to be able to do all that different stuff.
Well, and I guess, and we haven't talked a lot about that because you generally deal with people that are 15 years or closer to retirement, but somebody in their 20s or just getting into the workforce, it's all about putting money away.
That's right.
At this point. It's just about accumulating wealth.
And you can afford to take more risk.
Sure.
So you hear big prominent people like Warren Buffett, and you hear people like Jack Bogle, who just passed away recently. He's a guy who started a company called Vanguard, the world's largest mutual fund company, which is a good do-it-yourself place. And they do a lot of that robo stuff, right? They do a lot of the same kind of things, but their whole philosophy is just buy the indexes and ride through the ups and downs. In the long run, you're going to be okay. Well, that's okay if you never got to touch your money. So you can go through a 2008 market condition when you got a paycheck coming in. When you don't have that paycheck coming in anymore, the rules change. So if you're like the majority of folks who are going to have to reach into their life savings to be able to fund their lifestyle when they're retiring, the rules change on you. When you go through a big downturn like that and you're having to reach in and pull money to support your lifestyle through that downturn, I mean, you got to make some tough decisions at that point. Market goes down 50%. You got to either stop taking money out and change your lifestyle dramatically, or you're going to run a good risk of running out of money. And the rules change on you when that happens, and nobody talks about that stuff.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, and it's one of those things that, and I think you said it, the best is that, for a young person, yes, but for somebody that has so many moving parts when we talk about retirement, that it just makes sense to have a coach on their side. So thanks for the question, Evan. Next question is from Denise in Dunwoody. As my deceased husband's annuitant. That's a word, another word that you don't use every day. Annuitant.
Annuitant.
I guess that's the recipient of the annuity.
That's right.
I have to decide whether to select one life annuity or fixed period annuity. Both require that I estimate when I will die. The company thinks I live 23 years or more to the age of 97, which I think is absurd. How do I know which one to choose so the remaining money goes to my beneficiaries? Another complicated question.
Well, you gotta, it's a great question. So she could go with the single lifetime annuity. So that's going to give her the highest payout. And then you have these things called period certains, where the money is going to pay out to somebody over a period of time. So for an example, maybe it's like a 10-year period certain where they're going to pay out the money to somebody for 10 years or 20 years. So the longer that you want it to be certain that money is going to pay out, then the lesser amount of money they're going to give you on a monthly basis or on an annual basis. So you got to kind of work out the math on that of, what is the difference between the single lifetime and those different options, and how much money you're losing. But most of the time, it's going to make sense to you of which one to pick.
Now, I'm just going out on a limb here, Patrick. Yes. But something tells me that the annuity company is probably going to do what's in their best interest, whereas you are going to do what's in the client's best interest.
For sure.
And here's the difference, because most people will get this paperwork or whatever, the electronic form, try to do this on their own, end up making a huge mistake. And I think we've talked about it in other shows. You've got one guy that you were looked at his annuity, and he was paying, what was it, 30% a year or 30% a month or so? It was something.
Well, yeah, he was paying 5% in fees, but he had a $600,000 in the annuity, so he's paying $30,000 a year in fees.
$30,000 a year in fees. I knew it was something ridiculous,
and that's not uncommon. I see that every day,
and they love that. Annuity companies get very.
Oh man, they make so much money. They make so much money off of that stuff. So and for the annuities or the annuity company, right? They're like, oh yeah, that single lifetime option. I mean, go ahead and get the highest amount. Whereas that's not typically the way you want to go. If her concern is she wants to make sure that if she passes away early, that the money's actually going to go to her family, then that's not the way she wants to go. So that would be the quick answer. The other answer to that is if you got any kind of annuity like that, you want to be giving us a call so we can go through those options and help you work out what is really going to be the best option for you and work out for you.
All right, that's great advice. We don't have time to get to Anthony. He was talking about taking his first required minimum distribution from his 401k, turning 70 next July. And of course, then you've got that whole 70 and a half, and the government makes it difficult. And another case where he should come in and talk to you and, and sit down and get that plan so that required minimum distribution or lack thereof not taking it, you can have a 50% tax penalty, the biggest in the IRS. See, I've learned.
Yeah.
I've learned.
I love it.
See?
I love
All
it.
right. Hey, listen, thank you so much again, for allowing me to
it's
help
been
you
so
host
much
the
fun, as
show.
always.
And so much great stuff here. And every week we're going to continue to explore new topics and bring on some guests. And we're going to continue to have more information for you. So once again, in order to get in touch with Patrick, and don't put this off anymore. I know you want to. You'd rather watch football, but all you got to do is get in and see Patrick, and then you can have Swan Sleep Well at Night money. 770-545-8881. 770-545-8881. Find more on the web at BellaAdvisors.com, named after your daughter, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Isn't that nice? I like that. Patrick, we'll see you next time, my friend, and thank you so much for joining us for another edition of 5 Star Retirement.